I was a strange little kid, probably, because I actually started thinking about my death before I was 8 years old. I went swimming at the Y. I was a terrible swimmer, and I got in over my head in the water, and I freaked out. And I didn't drown, obviously, and I didn't almost drown because I had a lifeguard, but I thought I almost drowned. So I never did really learn to swim. So first thing for my 21-year-old self, tell your 8-year-old self to learn how to swim. It's a very good idea. A little bit later in my teenage years, I had an unusual experience. I was at a birthday party for this girl, Pam Armstrong, who had a crush on me. She had a horse, they had a big house, underground garage, the whole bit. She secreted me upstairs to a third-floor bedroom where I fumbled at unsnapping her bras. I'd never tried that before. Unfortunately, her father walked in. He just said, "Get out." So that kind of ruined the chemistry, and I didn't really get to know her that well afterwards. I wasn't very good at apologizing. I was pretty embarrassed. He was a colleague of my father's. I didn't really know what to do. Maybe 6 months later, her mother, in her sadness or depression, committed suicide by sitting in the car in the underground garage, which killed the daughter, which I then heard about on the radio in the morning. And her father then asked me to be a pallbearer, which is a very weird thing to do as a 17-year-old kid, to bury a 16-year-old girl from your high school. What I learned from that later was that don't let your pride get in the way of dealing with your embarrassment, because I could have talked to her at least and made up for it. Didn't have to become her boyfriend, but I really didn't know what to do, and I kind of regret that to this day. A year later or so, on the way to Baltimore with my father in August, a very hot August day, to bury my Uncle Robert, a guy on the highway, he slammed into the middle guardrail, and the car slowed down. We were behind him. We got out. The guy, he was an older man with his wife and his 2 kids in the car, had a heart attack. We watched him die on the highway. I was a kid. And I had other deaths, but those are the ones really stuck with me. It also made me think that, that Siddhartha was a novel, not real life, so don't follow the role of that character in Hermann Hesse's novel. But it also made me think, what did I want out of my life in a way? And I really wanted adventure, but I also was probably obsessed in some strange way with my sense of legacy or my legend, to the point of that when I did move to New York, to be a freelance writer, I often thought about what would happen if I was run over by a cab or pushed onto the subway tracks. Would my obituary read, "Promising young jazz critic, cut down in his youth"? Which is very weird. But I did think about it. But it also made me want to write things. And it also made me extremely happy when I was looking at microfilm, if anybody remembers what that is, before the internet. And I saw an article that I had written on microfilm, which made me think that someone will then someday see this article about David Murray of the World Saxophone Quartet and have a window into a cultural time when I was alive. And that always something I always wanted to make sure I left something for people. But my thoughts about death, though, I did know I didn't want to die by water. I didn't want to die by fire. Absolutely not. However, what gives me a lot of pleasure and meaning in life is taking a long walk on a beach where there aren't any people, listening to the waves of the ocean, or just sitting at night with a full moon listening to the ocean, or sunset, hearing a kora or drums and smelling a wood fire, or starting a fire and smelling a pig sizzle over it. So I love fire and I love water, but not when it's to my demise. Some of the things I had to learn along the way is that basically patience and perseverance are really worthwhile. And also, at one point, I wanted to go hitchhiking from Nigeria to Senegal. My father and my mother didn't really think it was a great idea, but what my father made me do was go to the bank, take out a loan to buy my tickets, which I then paid back immediately because I had a job. He had some sort of insurance policy on it. But what he wanted to do is to make certain that I was committed to this. So I had to make a decision. As much as I hated him for it, was really, really pissed off about it, I think looking back that sometimes your elders can have you do things that are worthwhile and beneficial and will help you later, even though you don't appreciate it at the time. So that's one thing I would tell my 21-year-old self. I would also say, when you're on the equator, don't go walking on the ocean at noon, because you will get a sunburn. No matter how dark you are, it's not very comfortable. And throughout my life, the jobs I had, a speechwriter, not very fulfilling for a politician. It's a job. But I also ended up being an arts grant maker. And one of the things that I found that I still enjoy doing is helping people clarify their thoughts. Not tell them what I think they should think, but see that little light bulb go off in the back of their head, behind their eye, where they realize they finally know what they're trying to say. Be it good or bad or right or wrong, but having someone clarify what they think, what they're trying to convey. So that's something I still enjoy doing. I don't like being an editor on paper. I hate that job. But just talking to people is very fun. I hope that when I do pass, I will leave the people with the idea of having a barbecue and remembering that the legendary barbecues that I would do, so if there's something left of my spirit that they can carry forward. And speaking of spirit, it's really important. It would have been really important to me early on if I'd realized that my Marxian ideas and stuff and my dislike of the organized religion did not mean you could not be spiritual. Because one night I was sitting in a bar drinking a scotch, talking to a woman after a blues concert. She asked me about spirituality, and I was like, no. She said, "Are you a godless man?" That's a scary thought to have someone ask you over a drink. At which point she said, well, you don't believe in anything spiritual? I said, well, a saxophone solo, a good meal. And she said, that's spiritual. So basically communing, breaking bread, hearing great music, seeing beautiful artwork is spirituality. And that I disavowed for many years because I didn't want to be tied to religion. And I regret that in a way. And I would say, don't do things that you know you're going to regret unless it's really worthwhile. And I should have taken Spanish in California when I was around a bunch of Mexican workers. I regret that. So if you're going to regret not doing something, do it. And when I get to my death, I certainly hope at least the week before, sometime close to that, I talk to a young kid, hear some new music, have a meal I've never had before, I get a new hat, and then upon my death, someone takes my new hat and my ashes on a trip to a place I've never been before.